But I'd like to start off with the concept of automation overall as the big broadest category. Let's start off with kind of like why it's important and what are some of the benefits. So Dawn, I'd like to start with you. You're a CPA, you're a certified fraud examiner. Why is automation important in today's accounting team environment? And this is kind of a sub-question. In the context of automating tasks, how have you seen technology evolve? So, accountants and bookkeepers have unique challenges, particularly in terms of data accuracy, compliance, fraud, risk. How are you seeing automation in today's accounting team environment?
Yeah, I mean, to me, my team, we talk about automation and automating absolutely everything that we can. And I tell my team, the minute you start pushing anything on this, we have a problem. That means we have something's broken. With technology today, there should not be any of that necessarily coming on, but rather we should, I want to get rid of this too, the clicker, right? I don't even want to click anymore, but I have to, at least at this point. But at the end of the day, the automation, the level of accuracy through the correct and proper use of automation, let's make sure we say that, because there are tools out there that say they automate and just dump information into an accounting software and it's inaccurate. We have issues. So automation is so important for that accuracy level. And even more importantly to me is the timeliness. We in the accounting industry has historically been a look back profession. We've always looked back, doing transactions from December in January. Why are we doing that? So now understand where the technology has come, where we were that after the fact payroll, they call it, or after the fact transactional,
or write-up. Do you remember write-up? Do you remember those days where you would actually take transactions that already happened and create books out of them? I mean, we're going in the Wayback Machine a little bit, but yeah.
It feels like a Wayback Machine, but it hasn't really been that long. If you think about it, so for me as a fraud examiner, as somebody who represents people before the IRS, where they're digging into details, if I don't have the information necessary or the ability to get the information easily to an auditor, that's where we end up. Either they open it up to even bigger scope. They're like, you don't have any receipts for this. You don't have any proof of payment of that. And you're like, no, we don't. And they're like, disallow. Think of, here's a great example, mileage, for instance. There's an app called MileIQ. That's an automation tool. Do you know what it does? The minute you start driving, it tracks that you're driving. Do you know why? Because it knows you can't run that fast. So you're in the car, you're driving, it knows you're on a trip. It's GPS tracking. It's an automation tool for the substantiation of mileage within your business. Simple automation tool. So we have the tools, and that's another thing the IRS will scrutinize, saying, hey, what do you mean you don't have any receipts? What do you mean you don't have a mileage log? The technology's there. Why aren't you automating that process? There's no excuse anymore, is the way I see it.
I love it. There's no excuse anymore. And I also love hearing like a specific example like mileage. And as we go through this, our panelists will bring more and more, so folks at home, just listen along and jot down the things that you want to be learning about later. So Jason, I'm going to switch to you. You're an expert in e-commerce, payments, and retail point of sale platforms. Why is an automated approach to accounting for all of those sales and payments needed, even if the team is seasoned and knows what they're doing?
Well, there's many reasons. Accuracy is the most important, but also you want to keep your team. You don't want them typing numbers in every day. You don't want them having to log into multiple systems and then find out, oh shoot, the login's changed. I can't get this data. We all know that it's hard to find really good accountants and bookkeepers to work for us as accounting firms, and really giving them tools that really make their job easier, actually easier, is really important for your team members, but then also for the accuracy. And really, it's important when you think about the automation tools that you look at tools that were designed for accountants, ideally by accountants. So they work the way you would work if you did it manually, in terms of accrual method, in terms of how you reconcile. I mean, obviously in payments and e-commerce, how you would reconcile the payments to the sales, how you would do that manually. The tools should work very similarly in terms of how they're created.
Exactly, and adhere to the generally accepted accounting principles, which then goes back to what Dawn said about being auditable and being audit ready. Raj, I think I've just loved it. Jason just lobbed a softball into your lap because this is a perfect follow-on question. Can you share a customer story on how accounts payable automation helped improve an accounting team's overall process? And I'm reading in between the lines there, also like make them happier.
Yeah. So touching on what Don and Jason had mentioned earlier, getting that audit compliance is so key, and then also getting that accuracy in place on how you're storing your data is key. But in a particular scenario, a client came to us where their invoices were physically printed, placed into filing folders, and brought to various approvers for a manual sign-off.
Now, who's cringing in the audience as they're hearing this story? Right? Who hasn't been there?
And so, yeah, and to your point, it's a process that can work for some teams, but what happens when a mistake happens, or if an invoice is missed, or something falls off their desk? So, approvers sometimes weren't always in the office, which resulted in late payments, and as a result, that can mean poor vendor relationships. And as a business, you don't want that affecting your credit score. So what we were able to do was automate their invoice approval routing, give their approvers access to the mobile app as well, so they could approve invoices on the go. And so with an intuitive system like that, you're not missing invoices, you have more visibility, and in turn, invoices were processed faster, and vendors are able to receive their payments in a timely manner as well.
And accounts payable is one of those things that you just want it done, right?
Yeah.
Like you just don't want to spend your whole day typing in invoices that every month it's the same thing. You just, So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, what we always say is, you want your team focusing on more of the value-added work, not accounts payable.
Higher level things. Yeah, use their brains, not their hands. So Dawn, I'd love to start with you. It's kind of a three-part question. I'm going to kind of give you a few things to riff on here. So the first is, how do you choose what to automate first? And then the second thing is, what criteria do you use to assess their suitability? So this is a two-part question. So how do you choose what to automate first? And then what criteria are you applying to the tool to address suitability into your practice?
Yeah, so we as a team here, through softball season in which we do taxes, we track the pain points. So we're saying this process is just definitely not working because it's taking me this much time to do X, Y, and Z. Or the tool we already implemented is giving us trouble. We need to think about something after tax season that we're softball season is and we have to change that. So we work together as a group, and there's only 3 of us here, so it's nice to have a small group. It's tough when it's a larger group. You'd have to segment. You probably segment into sections. But so then we'll say at the end of tax season, football season, we sit down together and we're like, okay, we've got our list of pain points because we tracked it as we went. It's hard to reflect as you go. And at one point or another, you're going to be like, okay, we just have to stop doing it this way. There's no way we can continue doing it this way. And we get together and we say, all right, what are these maybe 8 pain points we had over tax season? Let's stack rank them. Let's say, okay, where was it? We vote. This was the most painful. Of course, you're going to vote for your own stuff. We know that. But at the end of the day, we realize that every season we have things we should be changing. We're always evolving, just like anything else, right? So that's how we start to evaluate what should we look at. First is the list of pain points. And then the higher the level of pain, those guys we're going at first, right? And so then as far as the technology, then we give everyone an opportunity to do some research. So everyone, well, you take a look at this tool. You take this problem. You go see if you can solve it. And we delegate out.
That's like your big, if your big pain point is this, then hey, go find a solution. That's actually a really good way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, they like to be involved. They want to be involved in the process. Yeah. I don't want to be, it's not a dictatorship at Powerful Accounting. This is we're all in this together to win. To win, to win from whatever winning means to you. That's what we're trying to do. And so we do that. And then here's how we choose the technology. Once we all identify, before we go out to research it, we say this: it's just like finding a husband, a wife, a spouse, a partner, a dog, it doesn't matter. Here are the things I have to have. Like, these are not optional. I need these 5 things. If the tool can't do these 5 things, then we won't use it. So when you're out researching, you have your list of these are have to have. Then there's some nice to have, but the have to have. And then that way they don't come back with a solution that doesn't solve for those 5 must have. So now we're not evaluating things that don't run into that, the pain points themselves. And so that's how we kind of get it.
Raj, I want to go to you next because, you know, in the prep when we were discussing this, you did talk about the importance of APIs. So what are some of the factors that should be taken into consideration if you want to explore accounts payable automation tools?
Yeah, so I think Dawn really hit the nail on the head there. Is essentially, in layman terms, take a look at the demands of your business. What are they? And then start exploring with automation providers that fit the demands of your business. Now, in specifically speaking in terms of integration, there's 3 styles to look out for as a customer shopping for automation tools. There's API, there's sync tools, and then there's flat file transfers. Now, APIs are going to be the best solutions that are out there. They have
so API is application.
Connectors.
What does API stand for anybody who doesn't know that?
Application programming interface.
There you go. Yeah.
So the
I just want to make
program-
sure,
direct,
like, people covered.
a direct
I
integration.
liked on that for a second.
There's our nerd.
I'm more on the sales side of things. But so the API is, simply put, it's 2 systems that are speaking together seamlessly. It's not a matter of when integration issues occur, it's when. And how quickly you can resolve those issues. With an API, you can identify those issues quicker and proceed along with your implementation process. The next would be a sync tool, which are great, but you also have to keep in mind who's installing the sync tool. Is it the AP provider, or have they outsourced it to a third party? If there's an issue with your integration, who are you reaching out to? And then lastly, there are, sorry, Allison, you.
No, that's one. If there's an issue, who you're reaching out to, that's one.
Exactly.
I just went, oh my gosh, everybody's like, oh yeah, we know that one. Yeah.
And then lastly, which a lot of software providers will offer, is a flat file transfer, where they say they integrate, but it's generally being sent out through a file transfer portal, and then it has to be drag and dropped into your software.
Or a download upload type thing, which is kind of like the third. It's like, well, it's better than typing, but it's not. It's
not real automation.
It's not
automation, right? There's a few more clicks involved. There's a drag and drops. It could still solve a lot of your business's needs, but you got to take a look and see, is that something that you really mind doing, or is that going to be just as
we're not going to go down that path for this. I'm just going to be opinionated and bossy here, and don't do that, folks, if you can possibly help it.
So I would say that would be my advice, is that just look at the styles of integrations. Everyone will say they can do it, but ask, how are you going to do it?
Exactly. Now, thank you, Raj. That's so insightful. The next question I have is, again, I think we're just lobbing softballs to each other, because the whole concept of how it's being integrated. Jason, I want to flip to you. When it comes to automating financial tasks, how important is the accounting side of it? Like, is it important when you're choosing a provider, an integration or an automation solution? Is it important to truly understand how the app is pulling the numbers? Or can it be safely assumed that the app providers really know what they're doing on the accounting side? And how can you verify that?
It cannot be safely assumed that any software provider knows what they're doing on the accounting side. I think that's a given. And we kind of, Bookkeep started as a sort of a middleware between all these, sales and payment apps and QuickBooks, because most of the sales and payment apps don't know how to do proper accrual accounting. So we sit in the middle to transform that data into accrual numbers and then post it to QuickBooks. But what I'll say on how you choose an app, it is really important because, and we have marketing people here, but I'm also a product developer as well. It's very important that you try the product out. And so, and
Yeah.
I, by the way, try out so many pieces of software, cloud-based software, not just accounting stuff, but everything. I sign up, I connect it to QuickBooks, or I connect it to whatever tools I'm using. I create some dummy data. Maybe you have a dummy QuickBooks file you use for just for testing internally or training. If you can use
Larry's
that file,
landscaping.
yeah, so that you have one so that has some real data in it, because one of the problems with all these tools is you can't test it without seeing some real data.
Right.
There should be some real vendors. There should be some real items. There should be, some transactions in the journal.
Yeah.
So you need to sign up, and then you need to try it, see how the data comes through to QuickBooks, and then message the customer care team if you have questions. How responsive are they? Are they going to help you? I mean, and then see that the data comes across the way you expected and the way the workflows need to work. I was just evaluating a tool that matches purchase orders to invoices for my wine store, and it does work. It took me a long time to figure out how to make that part work, but it required a lot of clicks on my part. I'm
I think we
still
need to
trying
have you
decide.
talk to Raj at Quadient, because that's what
Yeah.
Quadient does. Dawn, let's look at now accounting. Accounting is becoming more prevalent. We are entering an age where we expect automation to be kind of the way that we do business. If there is a way for us to have a tool do it, we want the tool to do it. We don't want to do the old manual thing. So what skills or expertise do you believe that accountants and bookkeepers should prioritize to stay relevant and effectively leverage these new technologies in their roles? What tips can you give?
Certainly get started with it. Now, for those people who aren't already utilizing the integration side of the house, and they're still, I mean, I have a person that does some bookkeeping for a couple of my clients, and she's still manually entering the payroll journal entries.
Mm-hmm.
After the fact, once a quarter, she's doing all of the entries. Well, the payroll system we use happens to be ADP. They have a general ledger integration. So I'm using a payroll service that should dump it into QuickBooks as you do payroll, not after the fact. So there are folks that are still doing manual process because they feel like if they don't do it, then it's not going to be right. So with Jason's point, where Jason says, having a test environment, doing something like that. So some folks even maybe on this call are not even doing some automation. So first tip would certainly be get your hands into some of them. Start with something. I'm going to say the simplest technology, integrated technology that I use for my firm right now, for my clients, is bookkeeping. It is the easiest one to implement.
For your e-commerce,
So
and because it's a specific niche. It's like multi-channel sellers, right?
An example of that is I have an electrician who will all of a sudden start paying people out of PayPal and accepting money out of PayPal. And you know how we find that out? We look at the bank statement and we're like, oh, so you have PayPal now? Now we can say, okay, well, we're going to automate that with bookkeeping. We have, hairdressers that were just taking checks before, but now they're using Square. You're like, oh, you're using Square. So I find that I think everyone has someone who's using one of those, even if they're not a retailer, they're still using that payment method. So that's a really good place to start.
It's a different way of looking at things, isn't it? Because pretty much everything these days is e-commerce, right?
So Allison, one of the other things too that I think is important to point out, I would sit down as a firm, and let's start with your firm. It's like put your own mask on first. Sit down in your firm, and if you go to dawnbrolin.com, you'll see my tech stack and how it integrates.
Yeah.
Take that, use the applications. You don't have to use my applications, but even they're freaking awesome. But
it's a good jumping off point, though, isn't it? To see the ones that you can sort of hone in on, and they've been vetted by you and your team.
Exactly. And you could take that map and make one of your own. What does your map look like? Do you have arrows? So you'll see on my roadmap or on my team playing field, there's arrows where bookkeep goes into QBO. Okay, so you see that there's an integration going that way. If there's a two-way integration, there's arrows going back and forth. Do that with your own firm and say, what do I have that's a standalone over here with 0 arrows?
Yeah.
Where it's a standalone, 0 arrows what does that look like for you? That's a great
And
place
Raj,
to start.
I want you to weigh
Yeah.
in here as you know,
Yeah.
from a Quadient standpoint. Specifically, you had mentioned in our prep work that
Yeah.
automation can reduce risk for payments, and specifically, Dawn's covered a number of other ways,
Yeah.
but if you could dig into payments,
Yeah.
how would automation reduce that risk?
Exactly. I think so. To Don's point again, there's two ways that I think automation helps reduce payments, and there's probably a lot more, but let's just stick to the two that are popping up in my mind. One
Yeah, the
is
risk.
setting
Yeah.
up pre-approved approval matrices for your
Mhm.
accounting team. So with reoccurring vendors, your company is familiar with those invoices coming in. You can pay them, but as Don mentioned, when a new vendor comes in, what's the protocol? Do you have thresholds in place for amounts? We had a customer come to us where business was fine for many years, but all it took was one fraudulent check for $35,000 to affect their business. It affected their credit score. They had to follow up with their creditors. They had to follow up with their banks. It's a nightmare. You want to put controls in place that prevents those from happening in the first place. So how are you flagging new vendors, and how are you setting up approval thresholds?
And how are you
On
approving the
that?
vendor? The vendor
Exactly.
itself needs to be approved because a vendor can be fake.
Exactly. So having those pre-approved approval matrices are one way
Hmm.
to mitigate that risk. And then the second thing is getting away from checks. Now, more and more businesses are moving towards digital
Yeah.
payments like ACH, virtual credit cards, EFT, or wire if you're sending international payments. And yeah, checks are commonly used, but
Yeah.
to reduce your risk, what I would recommend is getting away from that. Obviously, some vendors are a little bit more old school. They might still prefer the checks, and that's fine. But you can still put in those controls beforehand.
So, so Jason, I'm going to start with you. Just from a standpoint of time savings, I think for ROI. But if there are other elements that you think, so what sort of ROI could a person expect if they used Bookkeep each month?
Well, when I think about automation software, just like I said at the beginning of this talk, it's an investment in your team's happiness in addition to the
Yeah.
money you're going to save.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of articles. A lot of accounting firms are losing employees. People are not going into the accounting profession, and a lot of young people that are coming out want to work at firms that are technologically capable, that have automation. And so you're kind of also investing in your employees by giving them tools that helps automate tedious tasks. So that's really how I look at it. With Bookkeep,
Yeah.
we have done some studies. You're going to save probably 20 hours a month per client, depending on how complex the client is. But it really does, and it's also sort of that anxiety that comes from, oh, I know I have to log into all these systems at the end of the month and get all this data and type it in. And I've been so busy, I haven't gotten to it.
Or daily, or ideally they do it daily.
Right. Or if
That's the issue.
they
You
end up
ideally
not
want
doing
it
it
daily,
daily,
but
manual. Yeah,
yeah,
you
Don,
want it
jump in if you
daily,
want.
and you have more accuracy with daily. So it's really
Yeah,
an investment in your team as well as an investment in saving time that you really want to
yeah.
think about.
Yeah, Raj, let's go to you. I'm going to ask you exactly the same question except for Quadient. What type of positive things have you heard from your customers kind of before and after?
Well, I think one of the main things is just those low-level tasks that you don't want to do. You don't want to be manually keying in data. You just want to focus on some of those higher priority tasks. That's the key thing, the key takeaway, and just a simplified process that is more secure. Those are the two key things. But Jason, to your point, I think keeping your employees happy is such a profound thing to say, like, because it's so easy to overlook. But a lot of times when prospects come to us, it's one of the things we ask is, what is the cost of inaction? Like, how much is it costing your business to continue doing things in status quo? And so what we do is a quick time study, and we see, hey, you're paying for a solution. We're aware of that. But what are the cost savings on time, and what is the
Yeah.
difference between that? And what's your return on investment in your employees' happiness, and what is it giving back to them in terms of time?
And in terms of being able to use their brain for funner stuff. I know that's not a word, but
Yeah.
you know, Dawn, I mean, what do you think? I guess what I'd love to ask you in particular, because you're a highly automated team, and you do spend a lot of time with your team making sure they're happy. Um, so I want to shift a little bit for you. Does the cost of the app justify the time savings, or does the time savings justify the cost of the app? I would rather say. And then how many more clients has your team been able to serve via automating those things? And then I have one more, and you can throw it in any way you like. And do your clients ever accuse you of not working for them? Because
Yeah,
I think
no, no, they definitely
that's
don't do that. But
the elephant in the room, right? Like, if it's
yeah,
technology, do I need you? Right?
the client doesn't necessarily interface with the technology all the time. You know, for smaller companies, we're just handling everything behind the scenes. They don't care. What I think, I like the polling question where people said, what would you do if you had more time? Or what was it?
Mhm.
If they automated, what would they do with their time? Those kind of things. Or they want to do more
What's the biggest
advisory work, higher
value?
level work,
Yeah, the biggest
more
value that
value.
it would bring to you. Yeah.
If you're not automating your accounting piece of the puzzle, how could you possibly give a higher level service? Let me give you an example. If we were spending time handling accounts payable manually, and we were posting checks after the fact because they paid their bills, or we were dealing with their sales after the fact, how am I possibly able to sit down and go, listen, I want to do some higher level of service for you. I want to do some forecasting on your cash flow so we can see when are you going to be out of business, or based on the trailing past 6 months, or whatever it may be. What are the trends that are happening in the industry? Are we seeing a decrease in what are we seeing in your sales specifically compared to last year? Are we really seeing an inflation affecting your business moving
Yeah.
forward? We can't have those conversations if the basics aren't done first. So if I'm spending half of my month dealing with the basics, I only have half the month to do the value. If I'm not spending any time doing the basics because it's automated, now I can give all my time to the value side of what I do for my clients. And that's what the change in the profession that we have to see is forward thinking, not historical thinking. And that's where I see the automation having a huge impact and being able to allow you to do that higher level service.
And choosing the joyful, challenging, those higher value things, right? So unfortunately,
like
accounts payable and booking your sales and your revenue, those all have to happen. Those are like, it's fundamentals, right? But do it in a way that's joyful and it's automated. Yeah.